Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so one of Britain's most important anti-racist thinkers, Sivanandan, noted that racism does not stay still. It changes shape, size, contours, purpose, function. We're in an era in which none of us in this meeting, politicians and decision makers, will think of themselves as racist. Yet systemic racial inequality still pervades every part of our society. Highlighted not just by COVID-19, the Black Lives Matter movement, or the emboldened far right, but decades of research, policy studies, government reviews, recommendations, and so on. So we don't need to debate whether society is racist just because most people don't openly say they are anymore. We know it is because of the outcomes that we see all around us. So our focus must be on institutions, on structures, and on power. And that was what this motion tried to do. And that's why we talk to people from the community and different organisations to build it. And that's why we think the amendments are unfair. So what structures do we have in Wandsworth? 40% of Wandsworth staff are from a black or minority ethnic backgrounds. Yet what percentage of senior management are in positions of power? The HR department sets the equalities agenda for the council itself. How many black staff are decision makers there? How many of the grievances brought by BAME staff end in a settlement rather than justice? What anti-racist education and leadership work, and I say yes, anti-racist, not bias or racial awareness training, are senior staff expected to have undertaken? How does the council audit inequalities? How transparent and accessible are racial inequalities within the various remits of the council service provision? I raise all of these issues not because I think you can diversify your way out of racist structures, but because it inevitably reveals them. And of course, it applies to us as councillors. On both sides, we are far from representative of Wandsworth's diverse communities, along both race and class lines. These questions should not make people feel uncomfortable or attacked. They should help us improve and dismantle. If you are not having difficult conversations about racism at the moment, then you're not being reflective and you've missed the point. And it's precisely why I think the triumphalist tone of the Conservative amendments is in such bad taste. So what are the politics? You know, in the 4 years I've been a councillor, here are just some examples of the position and the context that Conservatives have set. The first motion I brought to this council was concerning Trump's Muslim ban. Given the large Somali population in Wandsworth that was being targeted and the fact we host the US Embassy, I thought speaking out against it would be a basic thing we could all support. This council couldn't even make a statement of solidarity, let alone fight on behalf of its Somali residents. In 2017, we organised BAME parents at Cheston School to get halal food provided at lunchtime so their children could eat. We are literally talking about children being able to eat. This council's education committee did nothing and let a white governor peddle factual mistruths about the right of reply, right? The school has done nothing and there has been no accountability or follow-up. In March of this year, before the murder of George Floyd and the resurgence of Black Lives Matter movement, before the BBC sitting in limbo had hit our screens, we brought to this council a motion about the systemic racism of the hostile environment and the scandalous treatment of the Windrush generation, many of whom live in our borough. Not only did you vote against it, you didn't even bother trying to amend it, right? So I point this out, right? I know we're trying to do things cross-party, but I point this out because it's all well and good saying solemn words now about how important you take this and what amazing work you've done. But when it wasn't in the headlines and it wasn't a current topic, where was the action? Where was the solidarity? You voted against us. I'm glad Councillor Salio raised decolonising the curriculum because, you know, that is a fundamental principle. But all the work mentioned relies on individual teachers taking the initiative. This means many schools don't get this curriculum. And currently one of Wandsworth's flagship academy schools is going through a huge racism scandal. And yet you've tried to hide this from the motion because to decolonise the curriculum, an integral demand, you have to push for a national curriculum change. That's what's needed, right? And I say this to the leader, what is the point of a statue of John Archer unless people know who he is, what he stood for, what he did? The lack of a national education curriculum that teaches our history of imperialism is what protects all the butchers and colonialists that adorn our city. Because if people knew what those men did, they'd all be torn down, right? So most of us will spend the rest of our lives fighting this fight, like our parents did, like my grandparents did. Tonight we had a chance to take some basic actions in a better direction. And you've turned it into a backpatting exercise. And I'm incredibly disappointed. And I think it's insulting to the movement.
Thank you, Councillor Dikerdem.